What actually is an innovation ecosystem, and how can you deploy it inside your organization? Today in conversations ahead of the Introduced conference. Hey, I am Chris Wink. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Technically, the news organization with a community of tech professionals. Ahead of our Introduced conference, we are having conversations with experts and giving insights on how to build better companies inside the world that we have today. Today, I'm joined by Dan Toma. He's the co-founder of a company called Outcome and the author of a new book called Innovation Accounting that we'll be talking about. Dan, thanks so much for being here.
Chris, thank you very much for having me.
So, Dan, you have done quite a bit of research, which we're going to dig into, in and around innovation ecosystems. This is a phrase that means a lot to a small group of nerdy people like myself, but it may not mean a ton for others. So maybe we should start with how you define innovation ecosystem, because actually, as we were talking about before the interview, you and I have some nuance in how we talk about it. So you give me your sense of what do you mean by innovation ecosystem?
Sure. I don't think we have a specific definition on innovation ecosystem. And again, I'm not being dogmatic about anything when it
Sure.
comes to
No
innovation.
one's dogmatic, right?
Exactly. My take on innovation ecosystems is essentially stop thinking about your organization's innovation as a silo or an island in the sun, just a lab. Think about all the connections that that particular innovation department has with other departments within your organization, but also outside, and see how you can make those connections work, how you can smoothen the relationship, if you want, between, let's say, legal and innovation, or acquisitions and innovation. Basically, it's about doing internal innovation, not relying solely on mergers and acquisitions or only on partnerships to be able to move the innovation needle of your organization.
I have read through Innovation Accounting, the book. If I can get this shot right, one thing that I was interested in it was how it does take this lane that's quite effective and very practical for someone who's doing in-house work, corporate large entity, but perhaps even like growth stage as you look out about how you would do cross-departmental. You touched on intersecting with the outside of a single organization, which is how I've always come to know that innovation ecosystem idea, the ecosystem being many different species that are interacting with each other, small and large, the metaphor meaning that you can't just have the lion without this entire ecosystem of partners around it. How you just described that, what that comes to mind for me is the relationship between research and development and innovation. We technically have done lots of reporting, and I've just kind of been interested. The last 30 years, we've seen this rise of mergers and acquisitions, of M&A becoming an increasingly important strategy for large companies to get bigger. R&D is still a major part of many organization strategies, but often we lament the decline in R&D. How does it, do you use the word innovation to mean R&D? Is that what it means?
Frankly speaking, I don't usually put an equal sign between the two because they are not the same thing. And this is let's say, a mistake that a lot of folks make. And unfortunately, some folks that are C-level are making this mistake when they draw an equal between innovation and R&D. The way I'm viewing innovation, the way
I'm
we're
getting a little of
approaching.
this feedback. Sorry. Just I wonder. Yeah, maybe.
Is it better?
You held it like that. Actually,
Does it make it any better?
For the moment, it does. Yeah, sorry. Keep going. I apologize for the interruption.
Don't worry. Technology, innovation, right?
Right, exactly. It's just breaking up again. Will you just unplug and replug those headphones again? Sorry.
I just did it again.
Okay, maybe go,
Is
go,
it any
go
better?
I'm getting a little
Let's
choppy.
see.
Maybe it's just me. Keep going.
Sure. So basically, what I was saying is that people need to make a distinction between R&D and innovation, because the way, simply putting it, the way you can view this thing is that R&D is the process for which you're converting money probably earned by the core business into ideas. And innovation is the process that's converting those ideas back into money. A very good example of that would be the invention of the mouse. We use it every day, and we've been using it for 30 plus years, probably. And the story is that that was a technology researched and developed by Xerox in the Palo Alto Research Center. But they didn't know exactly what to do with it. They didn't have any idea on how to commercialize it, how to market that, where to put it to use. And they sold the IP to Apple. That was back in the day when Apple was a startup. And Apple bought that technology, and then they started producing the mouse that we all use and we love today. So you see, there's a big distinction between research and development and innovation. I think startups are typically really good at innovation, acquiring somebody else's technology and just putting it into a good product. Another, more recent example would be Tesla. Up until, I don't know, like 3-5 years ago, all their self-driving technology was not developed in-house by Tesla, but it was acquired from other large manufacturers or large technology companies. So yeah, there is a distinction between R&D and innovation.
You and I actually really appreciate that distinction. It comes to mind a fair bit of research that I've looked into or been interested in, how we often discount or underestimate the long tail of innovations, as the mouse speaks to. We often like to forget a lot of this is major government funded research projects by giant entities that then long down the road, before any of us even realize why or how it's being commercialized and deployed, and that's a sense of innovation. That's helpful. So okay.
I wanted to say another thing, and again, for you, as if you're passionate about this, and you're of your listeners, there are two tops that I like to look at every year. There is a BCG top 50 most innovative companies that's coming out every April, I think, and there is a top coming out of the European Commission measuring the biggest R&D spenders in the world. And you're going to see a big discrepancies there. You're going to find a lot of companies on the R&D expenditure top, and then you're not going to find those names on the innovation top, or they're going to be listed at different positions. Take, for example, Volkswagen. Volkswagen is a great example of this. They are probably number 3 in the world in terms of R&D expenditure. Probably their annual budget is around 10 billion euros, which is hilarious if you're trying to think in terms of startup money, right?
Right.
But then when you look for the Volkswagen name on the top 50, you are going to find them at position 38 or 30. So nowhere near the top 10 of the most innovative companies in the world.
Is that a failure of our metrics, or are they just different? They're just different things. The like, yes, you might do great research, and we need that, but it's a different category.
I think it's a failure of the internal system these organizations are using. They're really good at creating ideas, but they're very poor. Some of them are very poor at converting those ideas back into, marketable products, products that people want. Purely commercializing that particular idea that was generated in R&D. I think that's a failure of a system, not necessarily a failure of the metrics.
Let's touch on, I should say, on this dynamic between startup and corporate. Obviously, as in our brains, as much as we have these very distinct categories, there's clearly a spectrum, because fun fact, some startups grow real big and then they become what we might call corporate. So setting aside the connotations of the term, how, from your research, have you seen innovation deployed differently at startup versus larger scale? Let's just say the word kind of bigger companies.
Right. It's first of all, we should not approach this as with a one-size-fits-all mindset. We should not go ahead and say, all startups are innovative and all corporations are not innovative. Depending on the business line, depending on the industry, you might find that startups are actually better at innovation than corporations, or the other way around. Take pharma, for example. There's a lot of innovation happening in pharma, and most of the innovation comes from the corporations that are within pharma. In business to consumer industries, startups are probably killing it there. If we're looking at banking, again, retail banking is a place that's dominated by startups. The corporations are just playing catch up with those. So I'm not going to say now that only startups are innovative or only this type of corporation is innovative. We need to first of all look at how do we define innovation within our industry, within our sector, and then decide if one party is more innovative than the other.
Mm-hmm. And it's as basic as it sounds. In that sense, how do you mean innovative? What is your
Well, our definition, our working definition of innovation is a new something, a new idea, or a new process, or something new, something that contains a novelty element combined with a sustainable business model. And by sustainable business model, we typically mean something that has an impact on your financial results. It might be in terms of saving costs, or it might just be in generating top line growth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's go to how do we know we're measuring the right things, or how do we know that investments in and around innovation are valuable? And I I want to frame that through this lens of this means really different things. You know, early stage companies that we report on almost always they're founding because they think they are everything they do is innovative. That their central hypothesis is we are doing something, we're filling a market niche, or we are filling a gap that is new and novel. As those organizations grow, God willing, they have that success and they've established themselves in some sort of market niche. At some point, they are getting more professionalized and stronger in that position, and they're trying to improve their processes. And I guess that's when I typically see really play this out at the largest level. Those innovations are around improving delivery of their existing resources or finding a next generation products and services. So those are all are different kinds of innovation. Do you have guidance for how people who might deploy innovation accounting, how they measure the impact of innovation?
Right. First of all, for everyone that's listening and for everyone that's trying to measure innovation, one of the most common mistakes we've seen people make is that they're trying to find that one indicator
Mm.
to measure everything innovation, like Lord of the Rings, one to rule them all or something like that, right? There was one ring to rule them all or something,
Mm-hmm.
something like that, if I remember correctly, right? Innovation is not Lord of the Rings. We should not find one indicator, one KPI to rule them all. We need to look at an array of indicators that are telling us if we are on the right track, if it makes sense to continue investing in innovation, if innovation is a viable growth engine for our organization. Obviously, there are some indicators that come to mind. One of them, one of my favorite actually, is the New Product Vitality Index, which basically is defined as percentage of this year's revenue coming from ideas that you've launched in the past 3 years.
Mm.
If this year's revenue coming from ideas that you launched in the past 3 years is 0%, it means that probably for the past 3 years, you've just been throwing money out the window on so-called innovation. However, you just probably just throw out money out the window on post-it notes and bean bags and a cool trip to San Francisco, right? And nothing came of it. And this is why you have nothing to deposit at the bank today from the past 3 years. Obviously, you should not just use this because this can be easily gamed. There are other indicators you can use, for example, efficiency of your innovation investment. So for every $1 of new revenue you got this year, how many dollars you've spent in the past 3 years? And that's telling you, obviously, am I efficient in the way I'm spending my innovation budget? Then you can look at your portfolio distribution. How many of the new ideas that are generating revenue for me today are are of the core type, are of the transformational type, of the adjacent type? Again, there's many lenses through which you can use. You can look at the innovation investment and the results of that investment.
Mm-hmm. Dan, we are at time, and that is a great recap. Again, Dan Toma, he's the co-founder of a company called Outcome, and is the author of a new book called Innovation Accounting, which helps you better understand how to get the most out of your own innovation investments inside your own organization. We at Technically frequently report on the concepts of innovation ecosystem, so we are quite interested in, Dan, what you're doing. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
We'll talk to you real soon. All right, everyone. That is this conversation ahead of the Introduce conference. We'll see you in person Thursday, May 12th, for a full recap of all of our Introduce conversations. I suspect somewhere here there's a box where you can click through our other conversations ahead of our conference and see a full recap of Technically. We'll drop some links below the video on what Dan's working on. See you next time. Thanks, everybody.